convenient that you started by talking about Grameen, because this is an excellent case study. 1996, every one of those hundreds of institutions, they all charged interest on a declining balance. Okay, and in 1996, a consultant went in and said, "Here, this is what we do in the rest of the world. We often charge flat, and you can make twice as much income without raising the nominal interest rate. You can still say you're charging 12%, but you can make almost 24%." So the very first institution switched to flat, and within weeks, a few more switched to flat, and within a year, everyone, including Grameen, had switched to flat interest. Because here's the reality: is that if you're charging 20 and everyone else is charging 12, it's hard to explain that you're really cheaper. 20 is cheaper than 12. That's almost like you might as well just give up, right? If nobody understands the details, nobody asks the questions, they look at the big letters on the window or in the advertisements. Loans at 12%, and we could say, "Oh, our loans at 20% are cheaper than their loans at 12%. Trust us." Doesn't work, right?
It seems to me that one of the things Dr. Yunus did is he built an institution based on trust. He built protocols and processes and a whole different organism of bank and banking system. So why wasn't that part of, let's say, the educational process to explain that to a borrower?
Well, again, this is an interesting example case study. Grameen was, back in 96, Grameen was one of those that switched over to flat. And they were kind of in that common practice. And to some degree, I would argue strongly that it's not correct. But the 100 or so institutions, that if everyone's charging flat, our numbers are comparable, and so it's just as good as giving a true price. That comparing flat to flat is allows the consumer to see who's cheaper is what's argued, but it's actually far from correct. Okay, so now Grameen was kind of got pulled. We call it the downward spiral. Everyone's doing transparent pricing, and the first institution starts to hide their price through different interest rate methods, or adding fees, or other tricks that we know and practice in microfinance, and then. As soon as the first one starts to hide their price, then others start to hide their price until you're the last one not hiding your price, and all your clients leave because you're too expensive. So Grameen got sucked down into that. 1997, they reverted back, and as I said, and this is sort of, I think this is remarkable and admirable, impressive. Grameen is the only one to switch back to declining balance. Nobody else has done it yet in Bangladesh. Grameen's the only one, and some might argue that they're suffering the consequences because now they look more expensive than the others, when in fact they're not. Being a leader sometimes has painful consequences. Now Grameen did this conversion,
right?
Partly with the initiative of supporting transparent pricing around the world. I mean, Microfinance transparency, again, Yunus was one of our very first endorsers, has written letters of endorsement for us. That information, he's philosophically a strong believer in transparent pricing. Sees Grameen was sort of trapped into non-transparent pricing, so they changed all their pricing system. And as our report points out, we were pretty stunned. This report's about 4 or 5 months ago, and it's available on our website. Grameen, of all that we've researched over 400 institutions around the world, Grameen has the most transparent price, the most clear, consistent, sensitive, that's the wrong adjective, but supportive pricing system of any institution in the microfinance world that we've studied, of over 400. They really calculate an accurate price, an honest price, and they communicate that truly to their clients. And that gets back to what you were asking about. The Grameen would believe in communicating to their clients and educating their clients, and I believe they do both. I'm not sure. I don't have firsthand evidence of exactly what education methods they use with their clients, but the intent is there. They are showing their true price to clients, and trying to, I believe, educate them on how to use that pricing information to decide, should I borrow, and how much should I borrow, and who should I borrow from? Because those are very important questions for anybody of any income level. Should I be borrowing money? How much should I borrow, and what's the cost, and is that cost affordable? And in microfinance, we have done poorly at giving our clients the necessary information to make good decisions. And so in a number of countries, we're suffering the consequences. We see over-indebtedness. We see clients borrowing too much. We see clients making bad decisions. And an industry that was created to universally help the poor has a growingly spotty record where some percentage of our clients are worse off after the loan than before we came to, quote-unquote, help them.
This is going to sound like a very loaded question, but it's really in my heart to ask you. Do you feel that the central banking relationship to Grameen and other microfinance institutions that weren't exactly Grameen, but they were microfinance-oriented, were influenced poorly by the banking institutions, almost co-opted contractually?
We're working with the regulators and central banks in over a dozen countries, and I haven't seen anything like what you're describing. It may possibly happen in Bangladesh. In fact, we don't have a relationship with the central bank there, so I don't know if that is something that's happening in Bangladesh. But I have my doubts. Microfinance is still such a very small, the question goes through my mind is, why would the commercial banks feel threatened or want to, use behind-the-scenes measures to harm the microfinance industry? Microfinance is still, even in a place like Bangladesh,
it's a small niche,
a very small percentage of the market share. The banks, if the big banks, if they get involved in microfinance, so it's almost more like a token, good image thing to do with 3% of your total portfolio. 97% of your portfolio is still where it always was.
Right.
Maybe 3% goes into micro loans. It's still very, 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 very small.
What, for example, do you think really happened with the Grameen Bank such that Dr. Yunus was removed from it? What is your understanding of what has happened?
I mean, well, the motives from everything I've read and everybody I've talked to, it's purely, again, our perception is, none of this can be argued as fact, but it's a political battle between the Prime Minister and Yunus. None of it has any evidence of being grounded in Grameen being harming the poor or Yunus exploiting the poor and getting rich off the poor. If anything, let's go back to those numbers. One. The interest rate they charge is the lowest in Bangladesh. If the Prime Minister is going to get upset at some MFIs, there's 99 other MFIs she should be much more upset with. Profits. Are they profiting off the poor? Well, 96% of the shares of Grameen are owned by the clients. Any profits belong to the clients, except for the 4% that are of the shares that are owned by, guess who? The government. How many shares does Mohammed Yunus own? 0. None of the profits go to Mohammed Yunus. His salary is a combined total salary, including living costs, per year, $9,000 a year. That's in Grameen documents that I pulled out a couple of months ago out of curiosity. Meanwhile, you've got next door in India, you have SKS doing IPOs and foreign investors taking home hundreds of millions of dollars, and the CEO, Vikram Akula, taking home hundreds of millions of dollars, and through shares that he privately owns. And that's considered sort of by some, a success of the modernization of microfinance, where investors are making hundreds of millions of dollars of profits off the poor. In Grameen, no investors, no individuals are making even hundreds of dollars, let alone hundreds of millions of dollars off of the poor. So of any institution